Ani Bonjour, hello, from the fourth floor of Moore Hall. I'm Aurora Rae, today's guest host of Past Deadline, bringing you the biggest headlines from Central Michigan life. For more than 100 years, the student-run media company has been the voice of the campus community. This week, we have a special guest on the show to talk about her recent experience at the White House. Melissa Isaac is Gizhwaasod, or Protector of the Young. She works at the Michigan Department of Education's Indigenous Education Initiative and is also the founder of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe's Project Aware program. Isaac was invited to be a guest of First Lady Jill Biden at the State of the Union on March 1st. Today, we're here with Melissa Isaac to talk about what that experience was like. How are you?
Hi, Aurora. I'm very honored to be here. I'm doing well today.
I understand you met First Lady Jill Biden and U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy back in October. What was the dialogue following that panel, and how did it go from Dr. Biden's visit in Mount Pleasant to your trip to the White House?
That's an interesting question. About the dialogue after the visit. There wasn't a whole lot of dialogue after the visit. I know once a lot of the guests dispersed and people were on their way, she came out from behind wherever they had her holding area, and I just happened to still be standing there, and her and Dr. Murthy were, I was just talking to them and thanked them for coming to our community, and she was so warm and really kind. I don't know, when she hugged, it was like an anti-hug, and it was just warm and it was very genuine, and so the whole time I'm talking to her, she's holding my hands, just like looking at me, and just really tuned into what I was saying to her. And so I thanked her and told her I thought it went well. And she complimented Dr. Murthy, and she noticed how he, during the course of the discussion, was able to talk to the younger children that were there. And not a lot of really, polished people have that ability, but he was very good at it. And so I also said, and my daughter was one of them, one of the children back there, and so I thanked him for being able to talk to her in a way that I don't know, he was just very warm and like kid friendly, and so she took right to him and just engaged with him, and that was a lot for my daughter, and to be able to do that, so I thanked him for that, and that was about it. We just talked about how things went, and then they hurried her out, and that was the end. How it went from that to the State of the Union, it surprised me. The story's kind of funny because I was on a work call and I saw on my cell phone Washington, D.C., and I thought it was for my son. I signed my son up for a camp there this summer, a leadership camp. I'm like, did I fill out all the paperwork? I think I did. And my colleague said, well, do you have to go and answer that? I said, no. I said, I'll get to them later. So we finished the call. It was probably 2 hours later, and then they call again. I said, okay, I'm gonna face the music and let them know I'll, fill out the paperwork. And I answered it, and it said, hi, this is, so-and-so from the office of the First Lady. And my husband looked at me, and I put my cell phone on mute and was like, oh my gosh. And I recognized his voice from the many conversations we had before. And I said, oh, hi, how are you? Good to hear from you again. And he said, oh, thanks. He said, yeah, the reason why I'm calling today is Dr. Biden would like the honor of you being an invited guest to the State of the Union address. I put it on mute again and same thing, oh my gosh. And my husband, he knows me, obviously. We've been married for a long time. He pulls out his laptop and just starts typing whatever, all of the details, because after I hung up and was in disbelief and shock, I said, wait, what did he say? What day? What's going on? And he said, I have it all written right here. And that's kind of how that happened. And I did ask when he called, because I recently switched, my professional title from working with the tribe to working with the state of Michigan, or for the Michigan Department of Education. And I said, in transparency, I don't work there anymore. I'm not in that same role. And he said, oh, no, that's fine. He said, she just really made an impression on her, and she wants the people who have a vision, they see a problem, and they have the ability to provide leadership to have solutions for that problem. He said, and that's you. And I said, okay. Like, I was just like fangirling so bad. I was like, she wants me to be there. She remembers me. So yeah, that's how that happened. I asked what my role was. Do I have to do any speaking or, and he said, no, you just have to show up. We'll take care of you. This is her thanks to you. And, we're happy that you'll be there. So that was how that went down. For me, it just came out of nowhere.
So who went with you on the trip?
Like I mentioned, I was caught off guard, and I don't know what his title is exactly, but the coordinator, he said, well, we can pay for you, your transportation, your accommodations, but we can't pay for anybody else. Will you be traveling with anybody? You can bring one person. And of course, I don't know why. I'm like, oh, not likely. It'll probably just be me. Because I was just, I don't know, in the state of mind where I was in shock, like excited, all of those great things. And so then I hang up and I said, why did I say that? Why didn't I ask to bring anyone with me? This is like a big deal. So I started thinking about it. I said, well, when I talk to him again, because I didn't have any, he said, I'll send you a confirmation email, which airport, we want to be as convenient for you as we can, what's closest. So I gave him some ideas, and he said that he would send me a confirmation. So I thought, well, when I hear from him again, then I'll ask about the +1, which, he sent me the information. So at that point, we're texting. And so I said, hey, about this +1, I think that maybe I can find somebody to come with me. Is that still a possibility? And he said yes. Just so you know, they have to pay for their own flight, and, they can stay with you or they can get their own hotel room. And I said, okay, great. And then it was a matter of finding somebody on such short notice. That was on a Friday evening, and I was flying out on Monday, the day before the State of the Union. And so who can take the time off work, and do they have families and afford a ticket that quick of a turnaround? And, of course, I asked my mom first, and, well, my husband, but I kind of knew the answer to that. He's like, no, I have work and the kids. And, so I kind of knew the answer to that. I asked my mom. Oh, and I couldn't tell anybody. He's like, I know you got to tell your family. He's like, but, you can't tell anybody at this point. You can't make it public. He said, and if any media get a hold of you beforehand, let us know who it is. And I said, I am not talking to anybody. Like, okay, I won't. But then, I started going through my family members, and my mom was just so proud. She was all teary when I was telling her about it, and she's like, I can't wait to call your dad and tell your dad. I'm like, tell him not to tell anyone. Like, so it's like, I'm telling you this, but don't tell anyone. But she said, you're gonna have to find somebody that's gonna be able to help you. Make sure you eat, make sure you stay hydrated, make sure you're where you need to be at a specific time. Mm-hmm. Because I can't do that for you. She said, I will be so starstruck and proud and emotional, and you'll be watching me on top of all of the other things that are going on. She said, did you ask your sister? And I said, well, I will. So I asked my sister, and she was trying to make all these plans in her head, and she said, oh, we got to go shopping. We got to find something to wear. What are you going to wear? And we had taken the day to go shopping on Saturday, just the two of us, and we were talking about it further, and she would have had to make a lot of accommodations to make that happen as well. And she said, is there anybody that that can just go at the drop of a hat? And so I started thinking about the visit here and who helped me here, who arranged things for me, who didn't have a family that they had to find, make arrangements for, who, had a flexible work schedule where, they could just drop everything and come with me. And I did end up bringing my current colleague, Jennifer, and she was just, she loves politics. Have you watched, what is that movie, the American President, or like she was into all of that, and she was just excited, and are you sure you don't want to take your mom? And I said, yeah, she's the one who told me to find somebody, and her circumstances are that she can drop everything and go. And so she did. She made it happen, and I said, here's the assignment. You just got to make sure I get where I need to be, and you aren't able to come with me into the State of the Union. They're not going to pay for your stuff. And she was just like, I will be happy sitting in a hotel, with a beverage, watching you on screen, looking for you on the screen. And I said, okay, great. So she was just going to be happy to be there. So that's who ended up coming with me, was a current colleague from our team.
So walk me through the trip start to finish. How did you get there? How long were you there? And what was it like?
All right, so the trip from start to finish, I got the call on Friday. Well, it was earlier in the day, but I actually picked up the call Friday late afternoon. That's where I got the invitation. And um, Saturday, I went shopping for something to wear, because really, what do you wear to the State of the Union? So I started Googling. I was YouTubing old State of the Union just to see like what the dress was. And so I, went back a few years and said, okay, I can do that. My sister and I went shopping on Saturday, and we went down to Somerset Mall down by Detroit. And so we went there. It's pretty fancy there. Never been there before. I was like mind blown, like, wow, I didn't know that there were places like this close to where we live. So we went in the mall, and I picked out a few things because I wasn't really sure what I was going to wear. I knew I had to represent Indigenous people. Nobody put that on me, but I just knew. And I do that everywhere I go. So if I am wearing just a plain dress, I will wear big statement earrings, or something that I'm proud to show and represent. So I went and I picked out almost like a Jackie Kennedy, like a dark green knee-length dress and a little overcoat that went with it. I thought, oh, I could dress this up, some heels. And I picked out like a cream color, because I think it was last year or maybe the year before, all of the women wore white, as that's significant to women's rights. And so I thought, well, maybe I'm not in the know. I didn't get the memo on this. I don't think they'd send it to me anyway, but if they're going to do something like that, then I'll have that available, and maybe somehow I'll find out. So I bought a cream color, head to toe, beautiful outfit. My sister, she has good fashion sense. And so we picked that out, and I thought the same thing, like, ooh, I could wear these earrings or that. I wasn't 100% sold on the outfits that I had picked out, though, so we did that. We get home. Sunday comes around, and I got my itinerary, and just more planning, and was leaving the very next day. I flew out of Saginaw. It was just regular. People have that question, like, what did you fly in, business class? Was it? No, I was in coach, and I don't remember that it might have been Delta Airline. Still didn't have my hotel information and the agenda, like what do I got to do? Are there things that are going to be happening? And so I had a layover in Chicago. From Chicago, I flew right into Washington, and then met my colleague, and we met up. We're like, we're so excited. So then I check my phone, and there's the email. It was like perfectly timed. There's the email. Here's your hotel. Keep your receipts for transportation. Because I was like, are they gonna have like a limo? Is there gonna be somebody with a sign waiting for me? It was pretty humble. We landed. We had to catch an Uber, so we Ubered to our hotel, which was I think it was like Washington Hilton, or the Capitol Hilton, and it was a standard room. It was nice. My friend, she got her own room, and so we check in, go to our rooms, and I said, oh, I have the agenda, because then that popped up, and so she came to my room and we were looking at it, and she about fell over. And I said, there's a reception at the White House right before, and you're invited. And that was like her dream. It was both of us, really, but just seeing her expression, like she was just so floored by that. And it's a good thing I brought a lot of outfits, because I thought I was just going to be sitting in this room watching you on TV. And I said, yeah, we're doing this. All right. So the first thing we had to do on Tuesday that was the day of the State of the Union, was get a COVID test, but that wasn't until like 4 p.m. And then at 5:30, I believe, we had to meet in the lobby, and there were 8 invited guests total, because I found that out on YouTube when I was searching who the guests were and what they wore. There were 8 of us, and so everybody met in the lobby, and then there was a shuttle, and then I recognized a lot of the people from the team that came to Mount Pleasant when she visited in October. And so it was nice to see them again. They're like, hey, Melissa, how are you? It was good to see you when we're at Zeboing, and happy to have you here. So it was really, I don't know, they really did take care of us and make us feel important. And I think that was one of the biggest things, that when people ask, like, what was the best part? The other people that were there. We were just in awe of each other, and they were all there for their own reasons and really important reasons. And yeah, so maybe we can get into that a little bit later. But we got into the shuttle and went to the White House to the reception from there. At the White House reception, um, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of that orchestra. Is it the Marine? They're all in the red. Marine something orchestra. Yeah. Yeah, there was an orchestra playing, and they looked awesome. And we were approached with trays of, would you like some water, champagne, red wine, white wine, just people with trays of food and drink. Then we went into the blue room, and that's the one with the balcony, like the iconic one where they're out there. I know. I was like, what are we doing in here? Can I pull out my phone? Like, I just felt like there were probably so many rules, and there weren't. Like, we just could make ourselves at home and go in and out of any of the rooms we wanted to. I'm sure there were rooms that were off limits, but in the vicinity that we were in, it was wide open. We walked in, there were name tags on the little tables, really beautiful centerpieces. There was a TV there with a countdown of the State of the Union. And so we're eating. I had crab cakes. They were delicious. And then all kinds of hors d'oeuvres. And, like I said, the drinks were flowing. And we got pulled out one at a time to take official White House photos on our own. And then when we came back in, I remember sitting there, and they just put dessert on the table. And my colleague said, "She's behind you." And I was like, "What?" And I heard, "Hi, I'm Jill." And I turned around like, "Yeah, we know who you are." Like, we know who you are. And she was with the second gentleman, Kamala Harris's husband, Doug. Yeah, and he told us to call him Doug. That's why I can't remember his last name. It slips my mind because we were just calling him Doug. But we all stood up. She introduced herself, introduced Doug, and then went through and was greeting everybody. We were all gathered in the back to take pictures with her. So we took pictures with her and with Doug. It just sounds really disrespectful, doesn't it? Like, just to call him by his first name. But yeah, so we took pictures with both of them, and then she's like, "I gotta go get my coat," and then she takes off, and they're like, "All right, everybody, all the invited guests, we're gonna join the motorcade to go to the Capitol, and all the plus ones are gonna stay here with me." And his name was Carlos. He was very kind of he has a role, but he's kind of the I don't know, like the coordinator or the caretaker of those events when they're hosting things. And so he stayed back with them, and we said bye to our plus ones, and we got in a shuttle, and we were in a motorcade going through Washington, D.C., and all the roads were blocked off. And you could see people out there with their cameras and their phones. I was like, I had my Snapchat on. I'm like, I can't believe this is real life. This is so wild. Because I've seen a lot of motorcades go through. You see it on TV, right, when they're, hustling through the city, and that was us. And so we pull up to the Capitol building, and we were told to turn our phones off before we got in there. So we had to power down. We went through and a bunch of different hallways and up 3 flights of stairs. And then that's where the First Lady's viewing box was. Yep, so we went in there, and I'm like, I see this on TV all the time. Like, I can't believe I'm standing here in the middle of all of this. And there were, our seats had our names on them. And so we found our places, and there was a little bit of time beforehand for us to really engage with each other, the invited people. And I was fortunate enough to sit behind the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States. First name is Oksana. Yeah, and with everything going on in Ukraine, I knew she was sitting across from me on the shuttle, but I didn't say anything to her. What do you say? With everything that's happening over there, and there aren't a lot of people who, I don't know, in a good way, that make me a little bit afraid. That's how I know they have a lot of really good power, like good energy that they give off. And I'm like, whoa, I'm stunned into silence. Like, I don't know what to say to her. And so I was thinking about that on the motorcade. And then we get there and I'm right behind her. And I finally just said to her, I said, I knew you were sitting across from me on the shuttle, but I didn't know what to say to you. And she said, what is there to say? And I said, yeah. I said, but I do want to say um, that the civilians, the people of your country, like your people, are so brave fighting for their sovereignty, their land, their home. And as an Indigenous person living in the United States, I understand the importance of that fight. I said, and I just, I know a lot of my people are praying for your people and, a good outcome for all of you. And she said she appreciated it. Tell your people I said thank you. And she said, that's an evil that we've lived under before historically. And we will die fighting for our country before we let it happen again. And then, I was just thanked her for, being here. And we hugged, and then it was, time to take our places. But I was just happy to share that moment with her. That was something I'll never forget, especially the times we're living in. And, so talking to the other people that were there, those are the kind of people that were invited, and they were all amazing. And we were all wondering, everyone was really humble. I can't believe I'm here. I can't remember her first name, but I'm just a nurse. I'm like, you were a COVID nurse when all of this started happening, and that's why you're here. Like, you're amazing. And, I'm wondering the same thing. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm here with all of these like really cool people. And after we all started talking, like we were all wondering that, like, how could I be here with such amazing people? And it was like another really memorable moment was just meeting them and hearing their stories and the good work that they're doing in their part of, our country. Yeah, so there was a lot of standing, a lot of sitting during the State of the Union that I didn't anticipate, but that I don't remember really paying attention to, like when you're watching the State of the Union, if you've ever watched it. Like, yeah, they do sit and stand a lot. Yeah, so it was really interesting to also see like the Supreme Court justices of the United States, and they all come walking in. I'm like, what? They're like right here. I was looking around to see if I could recognize anybody, and I recognized AOC, and the squad was there. Yeah, and they were sitting up above like we were, but off in the distance. I'm like, oh, that's the squad. Like, I know who that is. The Supreme Court justices, Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz. I was looking for Bernie, couldn't find Bernie. I guess he was doing commentary for somewhere else. Of course, I saw Deb Haaland, the Secretary of Interior, and I noticed her right away. I was looking for her first, and there she was in the front row with the rest of the cabinet members, and yeah, it was pretty. You would just see these people on TV, doing their political things, and to be sitting in the same room with them, like, wow, this is where a lot of really important decisions are made. Yeah. So then, President comes in, and everyone's clapping, and he came in and gave a State of the Union. As soon as that was over, we went back down all those stairs, went through different hallways, and we were waiting in this back room, and they had monitors on where he was at, like shaking people's hands after the address was over. And so we were waiting for him to take pictures with us, which were like, awesome. Like, we didn't know that, we didn't know what was going to happen. And while we were waiting for him, we thought, somebody asked, can we have our phones out now? And they're like, oh, yeah, you can have your phones on. So we powered up our phones. And one of the gentlemen that was a guest said, is anybody else's social media blowing up? And mine finally kicked in, and man, hundreds of notifications, like friends requests on Facebook, follows on Instagram. Nobody's found me on Snapchat yet, so I'm happy about that. But just like all those different social media platforms just took off, and um, I said, "Oh my gosh, yes, they are. What do I do?" Like the consequences, not in a bad way, but the unintended, like unforeseen things that would have happened afterwards, none of us really thought about. We were just honored to be there, and so we were one of the younger Josh, the 13-year-old, got invited to be on Good Morning America the next day, and yeah, it was just this whirlwind of things that happened afterwards that none of us saw coming, but we were happy to be there. So we that happened. We took some selfies together, and then they said, "Okay, he's here." And so we got in line, and um, one at a time, we got to go up there and take a picture with the Bidens. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen those yet. I'm waiting for those still. I got my White House photos, but yeah, I walked up there, and I don't. It's just one of those moments where you're like, "What is happening?" And then you think like, "Wait, did that just happen?" But I had to walk up there. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "This is such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me as a guest, because I know you've met people all over, and I'm just really honored." And he's like, "Well, Melissa, we're honored to have you here. It's our honor." And I'm like, "He knows my name. The president knows my name. Like, what is happening?" But yeah, he was just really, just like you see on TV, smiley, perky. I'm like, and Dr. Biden's there, and she's warm and, loving, and took a picture with them. And then we went out in the hall and waited for everybody to get done. Got back in the shuttle, went back to the White House to pick up our plus ones, and they had a fabulous time while we were gone. They got to watch it in the theater. There's a theater in the White House, and they had a little snack bar with popcorn and more champagne and candy and a whole bunch of stuff. So they came on, and they were, had been drinking wine for about 3 hours, so they were pretty happy. They're planning a reunion apparently, outside of the White House, obviously, but yeah, they were like, "Oh, we saw you," and this and that, and yeah, it was a good time. We went back to the hotel, and we all met up there in the lobby, and people who had been watching it saw us pull up, and they're like, "Oh, there's the boy, there's Josh. We saw your skirt." Like, they were just, "How was it?" And so after we talked to a lot of people, and I called home and talked to my mom and everybody else, it was probably about 2:30 in the morning, and my flight was at 11 a.m. the next day to fly back home. So it was quick. It was amazing. It was nothing that I ever dreamed in my life. It's not something you think about, right? Like, someday I'm gonna be invited to the State of the Union. I know I've never thought that. Maybe people do, but it just still blows my mind. Yeah. Like, I can't believe I was there. I can't believe I got invited. And I was trying to think, make sense of it in my logical mind. Like, what moment did she decide that I was going to be the one to visit? Was it when we went on the tour in the museum? Was it because I felt like that was very, like, I was in hostess mode, and, "Oh, hello, welcome. We're going through the museum. Here's this, here's that." And making sure that, everything went as planned. But I didn't really, in my head, there wasn't a moment where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, we could be best friends." Like anything like that, like, how you kind of have those moments with people where you just kind of know you click. And maybe it was at the end when we were talking about the kids and the family and debriefing about things. I don't know. I won't ever know. I won't ever ask, even if I was given the chance. Just like, "Thank you for the opportunity."
So after all that shopping, what did you end up wearing?
Well, as it turns out, I was leaving my house at 12:30 to catch my flight in Saginaw, and my lifelong bestie, my best friend, I call her my sister. She's a dressmaker, and she makes a lot of my traditional wear for like powwows and things like that. And she's a really good artist. Summer Peters is her name. And she said, "Harry, have you left for the airport yet?" And I said, No, I haven't." And she flies in at 12:15, and she has this beautiful ribbon skirt with an Ojibwe Anishinaabe floral design on it, with a matching black lace shrug. And she said, "Here, try this on." And I was like, "Oh my gosh," it was so beautiful. And so I tried it on. It fit like a glove, and I'm like, this is it. This is the one. That's why I wasn't happy with the other stuff was nice, but it just wasn't. I knew these aren't the ones. I'll wear them if I have to. So I had a lot of choices, but I ended up wearing what she made me. Her and my niece, Memigwant's. Because what could be more special than having somebody that you love and have shared your life with to make what you wear. And so I received a lot of positive feedback from Indigenous people all over the United States and Canada. Ribbon skirts are like a universal dress and really becoming like a political symbol for different causes. So, for example, like our murdered missing Indigenous women persons, you'll see quite often red skirts with designs on them, and you know exactly what that means. And so she wanted me to represent Anishinaabe people because, represent. So that's what I ended up wearing. And when people saw it, they're like, hey, a ribbon skirt. Like they saw it right away. And I remember the first status when I turned my phone on in my news feed was, who's the auntie in the ribbon skirt? And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. Like, you saw that? And they were like, you were in every shot, because you can't see yourself when you're in the State of the Union. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, you were right behind Dr. Biden, and you could see her skirt, and we knew it was a Native person. And I got a lot of thank yous for, like I said, you don't ever dream one day that you're going to be there. It's nothing you'd imagine. But when you see somebody who looks like you, who really represents, Indigenous people, then you do see yourself there someday, and you know that that's a possibility. So it just gave a lot of people hope and, pride and, happiness that I was there and why I was there, for our kids. So that was really, it worked out the way it was supposed to when she came flying in 15 minutes before I was leaving with this skirt. So that's what I ended up wearing.
So you mentioned a lot of like kind of unexpected things coming after the State of the Union. Was there anything else that happened that you didn't expect to happen?
I think, even doing this podcast is one of the types of things. I've done some interviews, but I was also really selective in who I talked to. I like to focus on the reason why I was there, which is our children, our youth. I did actually, one of the things that I was shocked about when I was coming home, I had to lay over in Chicago again, and, I'm getting all these texts and calls, and I did get a text to say, hey, can we, one of the boards I sit on, can we use your photo and give you some props? I'm like, yeah, that's great. And they said, yeah, this is our favorite article. And so I hadn't had time to read any of the articles at that point. And so my colleague sent me this really nice one. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good one. And he said, and the ones on Fox News are like, we just laughed about it. They're trying to paint you as, this really leftist, crazy person. And I was like, what? Fox News? I even hate to acknowledge their name, but, and I was like, okay. I'm like, oh, I guess I got a lot of reading to do. So I hadn't even read it at that point. Well, then I get a call from a former colleague with the tribe. They're trying to get a hold of you. They asked for your information, and they sent us an email. And as you can forward it to me, I said, but I'm not going to address it. Because, again, I don't even know why they're trying to get a hold of me. Well, then I get another call. Hey, Melissa, it's so-and-so with, Native News Online. That's the name of the the outlet. Do you have a minute? And I'm like, I have like 40 minutes, and then I have a 9 and 10 news interview because they want to know how it goes. So I'm in the airport doing this. I'm like, I see this on TV. Like, I'm one of those people. And so I, all right, we call, and he let me know what was happening. So apparently, I was accused of being a proponent of teaching critical race theory in the classroom to elementary kids. And I was like, what? And I started laughing. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. So he sent me the link for the article, and I was like, I guess I have to read this. I said, I don't know how to respond to that. I said, because I don't know really what they're talking about. I said, but really that's a distraction from why I was there. And that audience, if they were praising me, that particular outlet, I wouldn't feel good about myself because I don't stand for what they stand for. That's not a secret. I said, but I'm okay with that. Like, as long as my people are proud and as long as our kids are proud and I represented well. Um, and he said, okay. He's like, well, you let us know how you want it, because they were ready to, like, you know, put out the story. I'm like, I don't want to engage in that. Like, it's just, it takes away from the real reason why I was there. So, yeah, so I finally read that one of the articles, and it was an attack on Dr. Biden's guest. Like, it was an attack on her through me. She invited somebody who whatever, and pulled up some, social media stuff, and I'm like, okay, so where's the lie? Like, where's the lie in my post that you shared? So I stand behind what I said, and I did not say, only because it's a doctoral student. I've had to read critical race theory and a lot of different theories, and this is the first time I've seen him as a doctoral student. I think it's just a vehicle for fear. Like, it's just fear inducing and really unfair. But yeah, so that was one of the things that I was like, oh, interesting. So that happened. But then just doing like I went to a conference last week in DC again, education conference. It was a National Indian Education Association conference. And I was sitting at the table, and somebody mentioned it because, like, they didn't know it was me. And the lady was like, was that you? And my colleague's like, yep, the one who went with me. She's like, yep, that was her. She went. She's humble. She won't say it. And oh my gosh, can I get a picture with you? I want to share it with my class. And I'm like, okay, all right, yeah, I can do that. And so I took a picture with her. And then people started to talk. And I took a lot of pictures with people. And they just talked about how proud they were. And it was really kind. And another lady said, have you had to sign any autographs yet? And I'm like, what? No. Like, no. I'm thinking, like, no, that's not. And so we were just, and then I see her little notebook slide towards me, and she's like, can you sign my notebook? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what do I write? Like, just my name? Like, I've never done this before. So I actually signed an autograph. It was cute. Took a lot of pictures, and people just, total strangers there that were happy. And again, the comment was, when I saw you in your skirt there, I saw myself in that space. And thank you for representing. We're so proud of you. Keep up, the hard work for our kids. And so it was mostly positive. Like I said, the other stuff was a distraction to take away from, that didn't have anything to do with me, but was an attack on our leaders, the leader of our country, his wife. And so, I didn't give that I didn't breathe any life over that way. So, yeah, that was a consequence that I didn't foresee. But I still haven't gone through all the friends requests on social media, or the requests for interviews for people that I don't really know. So, yeah, all from being at the State of the Union. Yeah, I really don't think I had my head wrapped around the magnitude of what we were doing. But everyone's like, people around the world were watching. You're talking like 60 million or more viewers, and at a historical time. And it was their first in person State of the Union. It was their first time hosting anybody at the White House since they got into office. That's why they were extra caring and extra gracious with us, I think.
So you mentioned earlier that you recently changed positions. Can you kind of tell me what led you to do that?
So changing positions was, one of the hardest decisions I ever made, because I tell this story quite often about being a teacher, an elementary teacher, and working for my community, my tribal community specifically, and how I thought I was going to be this teacher forever. Like, I would have a student, and then eventually I'd have their children. And if I was fortunate enough, I would have their grandchildren. I just saw myself being that teacher, only to realize that there are a lot of things that educators need to do a good job, and they don't always have them. I thought, that's unfair. You expect us to do this job, but we don't have the things we need. And so I got out of teaching, and wanted to continue to work for my tribal community, and got into administration so that I could give teachers what they needed to be successful teaching our students. So I did that for a long time, and that's, what led to, realizing that we needed support with mental health and social emotional learning. And where Project Aware came from was from that experience. Being a teacher, that whole experience, being a building administrator, being education director. So all of those experiences culminated to this project, being recognized by the White House and the First Lady, prompting her to visit and so on. And I had been offered a few times other opportunities, and I just thought, no, I'm supposed to be here. This is me right now. And then after all of this happened, and at the same time I was working with the team I'm a part of now on behalf of all Indigenous learners in Michigan, not simply for my tribe. And there's nobody there who looks like them, who is one of them, advocating for them or trying to make change, transform systems for them. And that's really, to me, where our voice is more important, is at the table. And I thought about it long and hard, and I thought, well, I think now's the time for the change. And, along the way, too, I have to give so many kudos and to my team, my former colleagues in the tribal education department at the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe. They are phenomenal, smart, strong people who have a big heart for our students. They're not there for the accolades or the pay or, things that don't matter. Their heart is in it for our kids. And it took me a long time to build a team of people that understand our students and look at them, with a growth mindset and an asset-based lens. Because oftentimes, if we're even noticed in the first place, we're looked at as people who are inferior, or they look at us like our knowledge systems aren't as important or aren't as significant. And so I finally had built a team of people who shared that vision, like, no, there's so much goodness here. And I thought, first of all, I get to take a vacation for the first time in over 10 years and be okay and not get 100 calls. And I'm like, whoa, this is what I've always wanted. Like, this is what I've always dreamed of for our students. And so we got that. And I knew that if I left, it'd be okay, that the work would continue, and that our population here in Mount Pleasant with our tribal education system is a very small fraction of a bigger need, a greater need for the 98% of our students who attend public schools. So 98% of Indigenous learners in Michigan attend public schools. And I thought, okay, I'm going to move here, and I hope I can help them. And I hope I can make the change that they need to have a better experience in schools. And so it was time. All these years, I'm like, nope, it's not time. Even 6 months before that, it wasn't time. And then things going the way that they did, and me having the team in place that the kids needed, I felt like it was time. And so in January, I made the transition from the tribal education director for my tribe to the Gizhwaasod for the Indigenous Education Initiative for the Michigan Department of Education. And listening to myself and trusting my instinct on all of that, and obviously a lot of spiritual things too, praying and all of that, and listening and trusting in that, I'm where I'm supposed to be right now.
Thank you for sharing that. Congratulations, and good for you. So what are you working on right now? Kind of what are you focused on regarding youth and mental health and education?
So the work for youth mental health has not stopped. Actually, I was just part of a listening session with the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education. and they had a lot of questions regarding social emotional learning and challenges and things that people are doing right now in their communities, across their tribal communities across the United States. What are you doing in your community that you have seen work? It was a series of 8 questions, and I did mostly listening so that I could give my input in writing, because we did learn a lot of things from Project Aware that we didn't anticipate because it was so new at the time. So Project Aware happened pre-pandemic and was in the works for years. We, were awarded Project Aware, and then a year in, the pandemic hit. And I can't help but think, where would we have been if we didn't have it? If we didn't have all of that emotional support in the works already, for our 3 collaborators on that grant. So I'm very thankful for the timing of everything. And it also was, because of the timing, we were proactive with a lot of the things that people now have to be proactive about. So we always knew that it was there, and it was underlying as far as like mental health and social emotional learning and support. However, it wasn't a priority. It was important, but it wasn't like the number one thing. And then the pandemic hit, and now we're having that conversation, like the fallout from all of that, which has been so extreme and really exacerbated what was already existing. And so now people are having these conversations and trying to figure it out. And so I hope to be able to provide input at that level, to say, here are some things that, we learned, and here are some things that, that worked really well. Because what that's going to do is, at that level, it's my understanding that that's going to be what frames the funding to be able to, because it costs money, right? Mental health supports cost money. And time, accessibility, all of those things. So I took part in that yesterday, and so I'm gonna, write my answers to those questions and send them in. So that's one thing. Another thing is, at the federal level is the White House releases. They're not memos, but they're just these announcements about their priorities, like press releases almost. And one of them lays out that that's a priority for the White House is, social emotional learning, and laid out what that could look like. And so I was really happy to see that. But yeah, so that's one of the things, and really just, we're all so different. Every tribal nation is unique in structure and practice, ways of being, knowing, living. And so it's really important for me to talk to each of the tribes and make that connection. And so I really want to work on that in the coming year, because I'm pretty familiar with everybody, but not in this capacity. And so I need to hear from them what their need is, because their need is not the same as what our need was. Some tribes are more rural, and accessibility is a big issue. And so I just want to, there's just so many components to social emotional learning and mental health. School culture, that was another question that was on the listening and learning session yesterday. What can we do to ensure that our learners have a better experience in the school, in the school buildings themselves, and just hearing what I know to be true, but just hearing it from all over, from Arizona, from Alaska, from Oklahoma, that their students are experiencing similar, negative school climates, from kids getting their hair cut unwillingly to school mascots and, all of those really harmful things that make kids not want to be in school. And so, the work continues, and curriculum, like there's just so many components. There's a lot of good work to be done. There's enough to go around, and I'm one person and I have a great team. My hope is that once I have those conversations and, they know that they can trust me with their children. My community trusted me with my children. We did so many good things. But but children are sacred to us. And so I really have to do the due diligence and visit them in their communities and advocate for whatever their needs are.
So you talked about different ways to kind of create a better experience for Indigenous youth in education. How do you think we should do that? I know you were talking about placing kind of Indigenous teachers in the classrooms and stuff so that kids are able to better see themselves. What specific ways do you kind of think we need to improve to help that climate?
So improving school climate is going to look different in different districts. So for example, a school district in Metro Detroit is going to look different than a school district in the Upper Peninsula. So it's going to be unique. There are components of school culture that can be like best practice or universal. So for example, you mentioned hiring and recruiting. There is research that shows students who see themselves in the school in a multitude of ways, staffing is one of them, improves outcomes. Seeing themselves accurately and respectfully in the physical environment also has an impact. So if you go to a school that has let's say they have your ancestors or Deb Holland or Charisse, the congresswomen, on the walls and honoring them that way makes you feel pride. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel welcome when you walk in there. But if you walk into a building where there's negative imagery and stereotypical cartoon-like figures almost mocking you when you walk in, how are you supposed to learn there? That's another way. So taking a look at mascots, imagery, the negative, and there's research on that too. If people need evidence, if they need research, there is evidence and research that shows how that has a harmful, effect on our students. Accurate history, and being inclusive of the original people of this land, and knowing, whose land was this? Whose land do you stand on? Land acknowledgements are really good for that, but what are we going to do with them? And so my hope is that through curriculum, across the curriculum, not just history, because we're still here, we still exist, we still function in society every day, making sure that that's included across the curriculum. History is a good start. Social studies is a good start. And to, continue to build on that. So curriculum, staffing, the physical space, and really building a relationship with the tribal nations so that you know how to best serve their students and their children from them. They're the experts. There's often this disconnect that, we go through these beautiful programs and we become teachers and we're the experts. And we are to a degree. But when we're getting to know somebody else's children, aren't they, it stands to reason that they are the experts. And how do we know that if we're not having those conversations? And so I really encourage school districts to, the nearest tribal community, the nearest tribe, engage with them in a meaningful way. Not to check a box or a list to say, oh, yep, I made a call, didn't get a call back. Check, we tried, we did that, because that does happen quite often. Survey your student population, because I know that one of the things that we're told quite often is that, oh, well, there's not, well, we're rural, we don't have any Native students. I think you'd be surprised if you really got to know your families. We're in a lot of places. So that's another way. Trying to think if there's anything else. Mascots, relationship. And I think I would start with that first, is the relationship part, because that matters the most.
I wanted to ask, what do you think the importance is of having these issues acknowledged on a federal level?
The issues of the indigenous people of the United States, tribal nations in the United States, they have to be addressed by the federal government, and not because we think they're so important, because we know they're important, but the federal government actually has legal trust responsibility to tribal nations in the United States, and for them to neglect those responsibilities to our tribal nations is, it can't be. It, legally, ethically, it just can't be. And so I don't think that I haven't seen it where, all right, well, we're not going to do anything with tribal nations. Yeah, you are. According to these treaties, this is what you're going to do. Um, the government has yet to make good on all of those treaties, but it will always be tribal leader and federal government, tribal nation, federal government conversations about the issues that are happening in what we coin as Indian country, the indigenous tribal nations of the United States, because of their responsibility to us.
So, given kind of what you said about schools and kind of like their inclusivity of proper Native representation, how do you think CMU is doing regarding inclusion?
Okay, so I speak for myself. I always say that I don't speak on behalf of all Indigenous people. I don't speak on behalf of the Michigan Department of Education or even my team. I do have strong thoughts about CMU. I think there's been great progress, and I will also say that this is very controversial among Indigenous people too. Some people are, yeah, this is great, but when I'm walking through campus and I hear, hey, hey, I'm a Chippewa. It's almost like when you're walking through and you think somebody says your name and you turn automatically because that's your identity. Your name is your identity. And that happened to me multiple times. And I'm like, I got to remember where I'm at. And so just walking and hearing that word Chippewa, not in a derogatory way even, but if you've experienced it, then you understand. And that's the closest way I can explain it, is if you're walking in a public place and somebody calls your name and you look and they're not talking about you at all. And in this case, my tribal identity. And so that's taken some getting used to. I'm not a fan at all of getting emails to tell me how I can put on war paint appropriately for a football game. But I know that our tribe endorses that, and that's a decision that the leadership, that they support, and that's okay. Like I said, I know it's controversial, but for me personally, it just does not sit right with me, and it doesn't make me feel honored. I've gone to a couple of football games. Didn't have any like unique experiences there. It was there for football, and that's what happened. And I do remember it when I was younger, though. That's why I say there's been progress. I remember like the macaroni breastplates and the headdresses and the little toy tomahawks and stuff. It was like back in the 80s. Like this was like a while ago. So to go from that to where we are, I love progress. I do. But those are just the two examples of the things where it just makes me cringe. Like, oh, we do have a long way to go. But in some people's, estimation, it's okay. And, I still choose to come to CMU for the education and, the development that I've received as a leader that have led me to that. So the quality of education, I stand behind that. The instructors, the degrees that I have for me, I have my undergrad, my graduate, and now I'm getting my doctorate here. So it's a good school. But just because it's a good school doesn't mean that everything is perfect.
So how can we follow the work that you're doing at the State Department?
That is a good question. I'm so new. Well, my role previously was as like I said, the tribal education director. But also all the tribal education directors in Michigan get together, and they are the Confederation of Michigan Tribal Education Departments. So they come together, and they're really the driving force behind all of the work. And so I was on that side of things. My team, the Indigenous Education Initiative, is there to support their endeavors in any way we can, leverage resources. We also abide by there's a tribal consultation policy that was ordered by the governor's office. And so we co-constructed that with the Michigan Department of Education, and that's the model that we follow. So we co-govern. That's That was important to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything that you see them doing is their work, and I'm there supporting them. And so they have a Facebook page. They have a website, cmted.org. It's case sensitive. It's all lowercase, but it's those letters, cmted.org. And so there are any kind of announcements or anything that they do, where they're supporting them to get all of those things done. And they're a great group of very dedicated Indigenous educators who are working very hard for our Indigenous learners. So if they are shining bright and then that means we're doing our job. It's not about having us be at the forefront at all. We're like, tell us what you need. Tell us how we can help. How can we support you? What do you think of this? And having those, really truthful conversations about what we think will help. Or if they come to us with something, hey, we're, not getting this data, or we need the data to be better, or I'm trying to think of some other things that, they could come to us for that may be a more state systemic issue, then we will together work to solve that problem or come up with solutions for it.
Melissa, miigwech, thank you for being here with me today. We look forward to seeing your voice more in our coverage and your work with tribal youth. Thank you again for coming onto the podcast, and good luck with all of your work. You can follow the latest from CM Life by following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, or connecting with us on Instagram and Snapchat. Subscribe to CM Life's podcast channel on iTunes and Spotify. The print edition of CM Life is published every other week and is distributed throughout campus and Mount Pleasant. Thank you for listening and supporting CMU student media.